Hi there, welcome to Prime Time. I'm Paul Orford and I'm back again with Victoria from PSP Angels, and what we're really looking to do today is to talk about professionalism in this industry and what separates someone who claims to know what they're on about as opposed to someone who knows what they're talking about, i.e. yourself.
All right.
All right. Now, I'll be straight with you. There is a lot of nonsense in this industry.
Yeah.
A lot of people who do charge too much, should we say, for a service which doesn't require it. So could you give some kind of tips or a basic understanding of what to do and how to get there in an efficient manner?
Right, I can only talk about my experience, but it's obvious that everybody's trying to make a buck here, right? Everybody needs to pay the rent, so everybody's trying to make as much money for themselves as they can. So it's very important that when you have a broker who knows someone, it's obvious that everybody puts a little margin on the way. So that's easy. You can end up paying 8, 9, 10% for some kind of processing solution, whereby if you just jump the line and go straight to the payment service provider, it would be much lower. It's understandable. You do need a payment broker because, as you mentioned, that you don't have time. You need to do your legwork. You need to be up to date with all the market changes. So this is what you're paying for. But there's a level of when it's ethical to actually charge so much to the client because you know that they are in need, and that's why it's important that once you use a broker, the broker is a company. It's not some kind of cowboy out from the market who knows someone who knows someone. Plus, we are talking about your own money, right? So it's very important that who is giving advice on money, it's actually putting a face behind it, because there are so many scams out there, mainly in the high risk industry. So you always have to be careful.
All right. So when you're dealing with a startup, where their funds, or they're not that well funded, they're always going to have, say, for example. And it's not a critique of them or criticism of them, like a CFO who doesn't have that much knowledge, or they're quite new to the industry, because if they employed someone with 15, 20 years, they got to pay someone.
Of course, yeah,
so like, how can you help a startup in that way then?
Right, usually startups have the tendency to trust all their operation with one payment service provider. The integration is quite lengthy, the compliance takes time, so they are opening with one payment provider and they are happy with that, with one bank account. But now, because everything is changing all the time, the legislation is changing all the time, chances are that maybe that payment provider could be going down, even for maintenance for one day, or the bank has a extreme situation investigation and the bank is closing down. Now, the startup is there, they want processing, they want the bank account to be up and running, but they cannot. So by the time they find a new one, by the time they integrate a new one, the operation could be down for 1 month. So what I would usually recommend to my clients, that have a backup solution. Obviously, then your volume is being broken down into 2 or 3 parts. It depends how much you're actually channeling through. But actually have a backup, even if it's a bit more expensive, because then your clients are there. They're using their credit card. They beg you to take their money, and you cannot because you don't have a provider solution.
Because I think where I've dealt with a lot of startup FX brokerages as well, they go for this all-in-one box solution, where they got like an MT4 out the box, so by default they do a PSP where some guys told them, oh, don't worry about it, it's cool, man, we'll get this fixed up. And that's probably a disaster for them, isn't it?
Yes, and the other thing I can see, as you mentioned, that there are many gateways out there. Now, the gateways, we need to understand that they are recommending payment service providers because they have a partnership agreement with them. So in a way, that they are working like a broker. Yeah. Now, because they are technology providers, they need to integrate that payment service provider's API in their own gateway. So what means that if you're going to a gateway and you're looking for an overall market research, they can only recommend 20, 30, how many PSP they are agreed with. Now, is it the best for you? If it's a white label solution, how are you different than your competition? How can you be sure that you're always ahead of the competition because you're always up to date of the market trends or the market changes? How do you know that this PSP is the cheapest, the safest, the quickest, the most reliable for you? The other thing is the conversion rate. because just because someone is taking credit cards, it does not mean that all the credit cards will be taken, right? So out of 10 clients, maybe with one payment provider who is charging slightly bit, 8 will go through. With another one which is charging a bit lower, then it will be only 4. Now, how much is actually hitting your account? That's what matters to you, right? So it's a very, very interesting and a very complex way of making sure that your payment is always up to date and you're using the right providers. That can mean the make or break of the business, mainly in a highly competitive markets.
All right, so for example, when you get the end bank or credit card, or however it works, you have to explain to me that also.
Yeah.
How do you assess them then to make sure that they're not going to run off with your money?
That's why our service is free, because we don't have actually the capacity to understand their operations, right? So we are not vouching for them. We are not doing any kind of recommendation.
Yeah.
What we do is a market search. So you don't have to waste time with that. What we do is we send out the application and then they come back with an offer. And obviously it's down to the merchant to pick the right one. But we cut short all the processing times, all the pre-application, filling out 30 different shape and form. That's what we are trying to help to the merchant. And obviously a bit of consulting based on the client's need. We can give them little tips and hints of what makes them better, but we do not really want to make any kind of recommendation because these are not our companies, so we cannot guarantee that.
All right, so if, for example, let's just use this as a case study, I was a startup FX brokerage with an offshore license. I guess you could take me as a client.
Yes.
Like, how long would it take for me to be integrated?
It depends. Obviously, if you have a license, it's easier. If you have a European entity, it's even easier, more easier. So sometimes those payment help payment brokers that you're working with or gateways, they don't have the understanding how the situation is so complex. So once you have an offshore company, maybe it's better for you to actually open a European entity and apply with that European entity with different providers, because the acquiring banks favor, obviously, the European entities. So there is a bit of second thinking on that maybe it's going to be cheaper and safer for you if you change a bit of her structure. So this is where it comes from, obviously the finance.
So is there a market that you do work with and a market that you don't work with, or one which you kind of wouldn't consider at all?
Obviously illegal activities.
Yeah.
Illegal activities are illegal. So everybody is trying to play within the lines. But as soon as the company is not illegal, it's just troubled because it's classified as high risk, then there is obviously there is a help.
Maybe it'd be good for you to explain to the viewers here, why does, if you do know, I don't know if you do know, but why does a bank account, or why does a bank freeze your account if you're an FX brokerage, for example?
Let me tell you an example, right? It was hilarious. I had a client who was selling online IT services, right? And the clients who were paying money, we are talking about low volume entries, they were from all over the world. Now, there was this Hungarian lady, which name is Erzsébet. Right. Now, A is a special character, so in the banking forms, it's excluded. So the money came in, Bet.
Right.
Immediately, red flag, betting activities, we need to freeze the account. By the time we went back to the bank, by the time we proved that no, it's not betting, it's just a name, they were asking for the passport copy of the client. Now imagine going back to your customer for 20 euros and asking them for a passport copy. It was almost a nightmare. So there are some funny ways of actually dealing with banks. Everybody's trying to cover their own business. The bank is not going to risk their license for your business, that's for sure. So as soon as they smell anything which is outside of their risk appetite, they immediately freeze the bank account, even though it might not be your fault.
All right, so is it wise for me to open my own bank then? Is that what you're saying? Take these sort of clients?
Exactly.
All right, cool. So, there is quite a grey area in this industry, like with Forex, where it's offshore, onshore, stuff like this. What tips would you, because my point is this, really, we're going the long way around, is that you only really find out how expensive someone who's cheap is when it all collapses around your ears,
exactly.
hence why you're so successful, I guess.
Exactly, and there is a massive need because it's a free service, as I mentioned, this market search. So it doesn't cost anything to look around and understand the changes in the market, but it can cost a lot not to. So there's no guarantee. Unfortunately, there's no guarantee in this world. Obviously, if you're going to individual payment service providers or banks, they will tell you all the pitch that why are they better and greater. But the bottleneck is always a compliance. So by the time the compliance accepting you, by the time you start to actually processing, then it turns out that how good is the good solution. I would say not necessarily go with always to the cheaper option, but sometimes cost can make or break a business as well. So it's a very fine balance between being reliable, the conversion rate is good, the prices are good, the technology behind is good. The bank is not going to go down in a couple of months because they are taking everyone. So yes, it's a very complex issue.
Do you know anything about banking licenses at all? I mean, I'm curious now. Like, is it hard to get a banking license in, I don't know, an offshore jurisdiction?
More and more banks are opening up nowadays with these new neo banking is on the rise. You know, all these application, Revolut, Moniz, you're just having a mobile application and you're transferring money to everyone, maybe sometimes even without banking fees. There are more and more need for that. So I would say that the classic banks of a high street bank, when you walk in, write a check and there's a banking apparel behind it, I think it's dying out. So it's more of like everything electronic banking and it's e-money license.
All right, cool. Well, we'll wrap it up there. As you're probably aware, a wealth of information. Just because she said it's free, please don't spam her to death. If you're going to contact her, please make sure it's a value and it's a genuine inquiry, because seriously, she's very, very busy. That's not to say, look, you shouldn't do it. I don't want to scare everybody off as well.
Go on.
But look, seriously, you are talking to one of the best in the industry, so make it worth her while. All right, cheers, Victoria.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
See ya. Bye-bye.